is shaking from.
The most oft-repeated defense of industrial agriculture is that it is needed to feed the world. This is wrong in so many ways. It is really important to know that industrial agriculture primarily sells commodity crops, not food crops. That's what makes its big money. But the other thing is that there have been peer-reviewed studies by the United Nations, by Michigan State, by other universities and entities around the world that have said, you know what, the only way we're going to feed the world is through medium and small-sized farms that use organic or other sustainable methods. Because that's the only way we're going to get the diversity of foods that we need to feed the world. You cannot feed the world based on those huge monocultures. We know through our loss of topsoil, through our loss of water supply, we know through the poisoning of our wildlife. I mean, 75% of all endangered species on our list are there because of farming and ranching. We know through the destructions of our great river systems. We know through what's happening in childhood obesity and the epidemic of childhood cancers. We know, and through the brain damage that's happening through the toxins in our food. We know that our industrial food system has caused enormous environmental harm. We know it threatens our health and our children's health. So it's an environmental crisis and it's a health crisis. But I would also say to everyone out there, it's a moral crisis. Every decision that I make, that you make, that your community makes on the foods that we buy, the foods that we feed our children, the foods that we grow, is going to create a different food future. If you go to a fast food place, if you buy industrial food, that's what you're feeding. That is the monster you're feeding. So you're not a mere consumer, you are helping create that terrible world that we need to get rid of. Or you're going organic and beyond, you're going non-GMO, making the right choices, going local, appropriate scale, and that is then creating this new food future, the one that we need to have healthy people, to have a humane system, a socially just system, and a healthy planet.
La agricultura en sí es una relación milenaria entre el hombre y la naturaleza. La agricultura no solamente es una actividad productiva, económica, es también una filosofía de vida. Pero ¿qué ha estado pasando actualmente? Vemos situaciones en las cuales cosechamos utilizando gran cantidad de agrotóxicos a través del uso de pesticidas de todo tipo, insecticidas, fungicidas, herbicidas, acaricidas. La agricultura se ha convertido como si fuera una actividad de guerra. El ser humano le ha declarado la guerra a todos los componentes del ecosistema, y todo aquello que le resta un poco de lo que podría ser su cosecha, lo ve como un enemigo. Entonces lo que era un insecto ya lo ve como una plaga. A las hierbas naturales ya no lo ve como una hierba natural, lo ve como una maleza. Y lo trata así despectivamente, ¿no? Y trata de eliminarlo. A los pájaros que logran alimentarse algo de las cosechas, también los ve como enemigos y trata más bien de exterminarlos, ¿no? En la naturaleza, cuando no ha sido intervenida por el ser humano, nosotros encontramos una situación muy distinta. Todos los componentes se mantienen en equilibrio. Entonces lo normal, lo natural, siempre ha sido respetar las estaciones del año, consumir los productos de estación. Habían técnicas como para poder conservar y preservar los alimentos, ¿no? Entonces esas cosas también hay que rescatarlas. A veces solamente pensamos que sea orgánico, que no tenga pesticida, y eso está bien, pero también a eso hay que sumarle lo que les comenté, los otros costos. No solamente el costo ambiental, también el costo social que puede ir detrás de todo esto. Cuando uno quiere sentir y vibrar y darse cuenta que uno es parte de la naturaleza, tenemos este gran medio, ¿no? Cultívense, cultiven situaciones, edúquense, y la agricultura es un excelente medio.
Our identity is so tangled up around this belief that we are the best food growers in the world. And so to dismantle that belief, that humility that it takes to say, we're growing the worst food on the planet, the least nutrient delivery of any food system in the world perhaps, but there's something more insidious at play that we didn't understand until we were on the ground with these farmers, is that in a culture and in a state where 85 to 90% of the ground is under chemical farming, there is a collective subconscious agreement or contract socially in that farm community that you don't talk about this. You certainly don't tell anybody that your crop yields have been decreasing for 15 years, that you think chemical farming is hurting your children and causing the birth defects that you're seeing in your kids. And certainly, we've seen the most horrendous of disease happening on these farms. These farmers' families are so sick. This is exactly what's happening to all of us under the pressure of the chemicals. Their children have attention deficit, allergies, asthma. So you've got this financial lock-in with banks, you've got health collapse happening in the family, you've got the emotional tension, and then on top of that, you have the community pressure, the peer pressure. And so if you decide to make the jump and stop chemical spraying and go to regenerative agriculture, you're immediately socially ostracized. And so we can't just be organic certified. That's not enough. We have to go to regen ag standards where we actually build soil, not till soil. And so we need to go to a no-till organic technique. One of the things that I have the highest conviction over now as a scientist is the concept of grace in biology. I think it can best be defined now, in my mind at least, scientifically, which is heal faster than you injure. And that's what we see in the soil, and that's what I get to see in my clinic. I see people who have abused their bodies for decades, and if they just give a pause, They do a couple of short-term fasts, they give their gut a break, they give their immune system a break, they get away from chemicals, they start growing some of their own food. Make these simple little decisions, and suddenly decades of damage is reversed in hours, weeks, months. That's grace at the cellular level. What we're seeing is that within a single growing season, you can go from this dead monoculture of corn or soybean to cover cropping with 16 different species and getting a no-till environment. You'll see the fungal elements, you'll see the mycorrhizae in there, the bacterial populations returning to the soil, and you see biodiversity returning in the form of earthworms within a single growing season of rest. The farmers that are making the transition are already seeing improved yields year one of going back to a non-GMO seed. It's so much more lucrative for these farmers. There's enough energy, there's enough food, there's enough soil, there's enough commodities, there's enough resources for everybody on the planet to thrive at a level that's never been experienced in human history. And so our mission is not to inspire the farmers that are currently fighting the good fight, it's to inspire their children to do the right thing and do it differently. Connected to new children who are in the cities, who are in the tech world, wherever they are, connect those kids back, give them a sense of that unity, give them a sense of the oneness, and give us all a sense that this is the inescapable optimism, as we are going to transform, period.
In order for us to live sustainably, the structures that meet our basic needs must work towards regeneration rather than consumption and depletion.
I've been studying sustainable farming systems for over 25 years. There are no real issues. We can solve all of them. There are really easy answers to grow food quality and with good environmental care. As a farmer, you want to create healthy soils and healthy plants and healthy animals, and further up the food chain, we've got the microorganisms which are governing the system. We just create a habitat for them. Then you got the plants growing out of there, be it annuals, perennials and trees. Then amongst that you've got the insects living in there, and then we've incorporated pigs, sheep, cows, ducks, geese, and every single item adds value. This used to be pastoral desert.
Was just grass.
Yeah, and this is what people can do. You can create heaven on earth.
was going to take place to de-escalate tensions between Saudi and Iran. This would have had implications, of course, internationally, but also regionally. I mean, this would have been great for the region. A de-escalation of tension between these two countries that's playing out in like a Cold War and in some places a hot war. And the U.S. completely obliterated that when they obliterated Soleimani.
But don't you see why they may have needed to do that? I mean, the threat of Iran and Saudi Arabia coming together somehow. And it did seem, everything I'm reading says that back since September, they started making these overtures. Are you surprised by those overtures?
I'm not, because what you had happen several months ago was Saudi oil fields were hit and Saudi oil production was decreased by like 50%. And the U.S. didn't do anything in response. And so that demonstrated to Saudi Arabia and America's Gulf state allies that if there is a war with Iran that doesn't include some sort of U.S. invasion of occupation of Iran, which isn't going to happen, then the people who are going to have to bear the brunt of that war are going to be the UAE and Saudi Arabia.
Do you foresee a world where Iran and Saudi Arabia could actually live in harmony?
Absolutely. I mean, if you took America out of the equation, because out of the Middle East, they'd have no choice but to live in harmony. But when you have outside actors that are coming in and provoking war and also funding, weapons and giving weapons to the Saudis, you're escalating tension. So on top of that, it's about regional hegemony, right? Yeah. And Iran is a big threat to the U.S. because it forges a path independent of U.S. interests, and that's not allowed.
The United States never forgave Iran for overthrowing the Shah. The U.S. had installed the Shah, and the Iranian people overthrew the Shah in 1979. Well, this was the danger of what some would say a good example, to show that people can overthrow a U.S.-backed dictatorship and can challenge U.S. hegemony, and the Iranians did this. Ever since that time, the U.S. wanted Iran back within its sphere of influence, because the Shah was the U.S.'s bulldog in the Middle East, along with Israel. And so really, it's Iran's independence that really galls the United States, that it is willing to use its own oil for its own purposes without U.S. companies being allowed to profit from that or control their oil. Once Trump backed out of the JCPOA, which is what the nuclear deal is called, and increased sanctions, then he went back to the pre-nuclear deal levels of sanctions, which really, and vowed that he would not allow Iran to sell any oil. And of course, oil is the mainstay of the Iranian economy. Iran is not able to buy foodstuffs. It has been unable to buy medicines. And so people are dying in Iran from hunger, from lack of medicines. This is really an act of terrorism against the Iranian people. They're attacking the civilian population for the political end of trying to encourage the population to overthrow the Islamic Republic. The U.S. now supports 73% of the world's dictatorships, some of which the U.S. actually put into power. Look at Saudi Arabia, which is a monarchy. It's repressive. It beheads people. It supports al-Qaeda. It is engaged in a genocidal war in Yemen right now.
And the U.S. has no problem not just tolerating them, but even arming them to the teeth. I mean, really what the U.S. resents is that Iran would deign to try to have any influence within its own region of the world. Of course they have that right. If you look at a map, Iran is bordered by about 17 different countries, most of which are hostile and most of which have U.S. military bases. It's Iran that's under attack, let's face it. And it's just this bizarre thing that the U.S. can go to the Persian Gulf, send military vessels there, military equipment, and somehow say Iran is threatening us. The U.S.'s position is it governs the world and has dominion over the world, and a country like Iran can't even have a little influence over its own region of the world, which is just crazy. I find American people in general to be the most ideologized people in the world. We think we have a free press and that our education system is really great and that it doesn't propagandize us, but that's just not true. We've been led to believe that we're an exceptional nation, that we are unique in our freedoms and our democracy, and that we have the right, therefore, to spread democracy and freedom around the world, even if that we have to kill 1 million people in a place like Iraq to do it. And that's why the American people really have to oppose this and make it clear they don't want this. And make it clear they're not going to reward Trump with another term if he engages in a war.
Diese neue Seidenstraße soll Asien über den Nahen Osten mit Europa verbinden. Das ist wirklich das wichtigste Projekt dieses Jahrhunderts und auch das gefährlichste Projekt dieses Jahrhunderts. Wenn das tatsächlich fertiggestellt wird, dieses Projekt, dann ist es mit der Vorherrschaft der Amerikaner vorbei. Und die USA sind natürlich nicht bereit, da einfach nur da zuzugucken, sondern versuchen das auf alle möglichen Arten und Weisen zu torpedieren. Man muss sehen, dass der Iran innerhalb der Seidenstraße eine ganz bestimmte Rolle spielt. Der soll der Energielieferant für dieses europäische, asiatische Projekt werden, weil die eben diese riesigen Vorräte an Öl haben und vor allem haben die größten Erdgasvorräte der Erde. Und das Zweite ist die strategische Rolle des Iran. Der Iran liegt genau zwischen dem Kaspischen Meer im Norden und dem Persischen Golf im Süden. Das ist also praktisch das Nadelöhr der Seidenstraße. Wenn es dort zu einem größeren Krieg kommen würde, würde diese Seidenstraße da genau in der Mitte unterbrochen werden. Und das wäre natürlich geostrategisch für die USA ein Riesenvorteil gegenüber China. Der Konflikt mit dem Iran ist ja systematisch verschärft worden von den Amerikanern. Also die haben das Atomabkommen gekündigt, die haben die Botschaft in Israel von Tel Aviv nach Jerusalem verlegt. Also die haben alles getan, um diesen Konflikt weiter anzuheizen. Und das ist jetzt nur die nächste Eskalationsstufe darin. Der Iran selber ist für die USA als Energielieferant völlig uninteressant. Weil die USA haben ja eine ganz wichtige Entwicklung hinter sich über diese Fracking-Industrie. Also die USA waren bis vor einiger Zeit ein großer Importeur von Erdöl und Erdgas. Das sind sie inzwischen nicht mehr, sind inzwischen zum Exporteur geworden. Das heißt, die sind davon nicht mehr abhängig. Also die Ölinteressen und die Gasinteressen im Nahen Osten spielen keine so große Rolle mehr. Es geht da nur noch um Geostrategie. Man muss sehen, dass die USA insgesamt weltweit ja im Niedergang sich befinden. Die wirtschaftliche Stärke der USA, die ist nicht mehr die von früher. Inzwischen als Handelsmacht sind sie überholt worden von den Chinesen. Ich glaube, dass das amerikanische Finanzsystem an einem Punkt angekommen ist, an dem nur noch das Fluten des Systems mit noch mehr Geld dieses System am Leben erhalten kann und wo es dann endgültig zusammenbricht. Aber die USA klammern sich im Moment auch außer ihrer militärischen Herrschaft auch noch an die Übermacht des Petrodollars. Der US-Dollar ist immer noch die stärkste Währung der Welt. Über 60% aller Devisenreserven aller Zentralbanken auf der Welt werden in US-Dollar gehalten. Das ist ein ganz starkes Druckmittel der USA gegen den Rest der Welt. Aber dieses Druckmittel wird mit der Zeit immer geringer. Und es gibt ja auch inzwischen die Versuche der Chinesen, den Petrodollar zu unterlaufen. Es gibt zum Beispiel im letzten Jahr wurde ein Vertrag abgeschlossen zwischen den Saudis und den Chinesen über Öllieferungen in Yuan. Übrigens glaube ich auch, dass Saudi-Arabien eine ganz wichtige Rolle für die gesamte Zukunft der Welt spielen wird. Die Saudis sind ja die letzten Jahrzehnte immer der wichtigste Verbündete nach Israel im Nahen Osten für die USA gewesen. Aber die Saudis könnten sich ja auch umorientieren. Und wenn die Saudis sich jetzt zum Beispiel den Chinesen zuwenden würden, dann würden die Karten ganz neu gemischt im Nahen Osten. Also ich vermute, dass es noch eine Zeit lang weitergehen wird, dass sich die Länder da gegenseitig reizen. Aber langfristig sehe ich einfach keine andere Lösung, als dass es tatsächlich da zum Krieg kommt. Weil auf diese Art und Weise würde die Rüstungsindustrie ganz stark angetrieben. Es würde bedeuten, dass sehr viele Waffen vernichtet würden, dass neue Waffen wieder gebaut werden müssen. Das würde die Finanzindustrie natürlich sehr interessieren, weil die ja hinter der Rüstungsindustrie steht. Und das könnte die Aktienmärkte in der Welt noch mal wieder um mehrere Monate, vielleicht sogar um Jahre dann antreiben.